Now, there was a time when if you wanted a cruiser, you'd have to take your old Royal Enfield to your local fabricator and get it modified to maybe kinda look like what you want. But that was then. This is now, and now we have choices. To add to your cruiser wish list, say hello to the Hyosung Aquila 650. Now, if you're looking at this bike and thinking to yourself, hey, that looks familiar, well, that's because it is. It looks pretty similar to the Harley-Davidson V-Rod, but not entirely. Still, if the moron can't read the label on the tank and asks you, hey, is that a Harley-Davidson? You can afford to be glib. No, you can say, but thank you for asking. Now under the tank, you've got a 647cc liquid-cooled V-twin engine. Now this is an engine that when you twist the throttle, you realize it's remarkably smooth, without any unnecessary vibrations and clickety-clack from the gearbox. Of course, you've also got liquid cooling and a 6-speed transmission, but with a motorcycle like this, that's kind of a given. Now those are decent numbers, and out here in the real world it shows. This is a sweetie of an engine. You can race all the way up to 100 till you start getting a few vibrations in the foot pegs, and further on hit 130 or 140 kilometers an hour and pretty much stay there. It's that kind of motorcycle. And this is a cruiser, so if you're looking at top speeds and red lines, you're doing it all wrong. As long as you can ride endlessly at about 120 kilometers an hour with the engine just ticking over sweetly at about 5,000 RPMs, that's more than enough. If I do have to nitpick about this bike, I'd say one thing. The fuel injection on the FI system could have been a little more precise, but that's a problem with most bikes in this category. Twist the throttle, quite a bit of lag, and then suddenly a boom of power. Now out on the highway in a higher gear, it doesn't really matter, but out there in the city, especially when you're negotiating bumper-to-bumper traffic, it does become a bit of an issue. It does take getting used to, and in no way is a deal breaker for this motorcycle. Also, it helps that the clutch is super light, so even though you have to change gears a fair bit while in the city, it's not going to be too much of a chore. As you can tell, the 2-in-1 pipe sounds pretty muted when you fire it up or are just tooling through traffic. But then give it some gas and people will hear you. And now my absolute favorite part of riding a motorcycle like this, the total and utter comfort. Riding a motorcycle like the Aquila 650 is like riding your couch at home with handlebars and perhaps a little faster. Now the seat is dramatically low slung, and my 6-foot frame did approach it with some trepidation. But fortunately, the swept back handlebars and the set forward pegs make this bike supremely comfortable, and yeah, I could spend the entire day on it, no problem. Ride is also very comfortable. You've got twin shocks in the back and upside down forks down the front, and that keeps things nice and stable, especially at higher speeds. Since this is a cruiser, we're not going to go too much into detail about the handling, except that the low center of gravity keeps things nice and balanced with not too much drama. This is not the motorcycle you should be using to attack corners with, but if you do, you're going to have plenty of leeway before the foot pegs start scraping the tarmac. Like we said earlier, this is an attractive motorcycle, and if you ride up and down the MG road in whichever city you live in, people are going to look at you and wonder to themselves, who's that handsome man on that handsome motorcycle? What I'm not liking so much about this motorcycle is something that can be changed pretty easily. The quality of the switchgear seems a little down market. The menu button only toggles the clock, and though it's not absolutely necessary on a cruiser, a tack would have been nice too. How much will this shiny hunky cruiser cost you? 5 lakh rupees ex-showroom Delhi, which is a very competitive price considering that the only competition is coming from the 883cc Harleys. The Aquila Pro ticks all the right boxes when it comes to styling, power and handling, and if you're looking for a nice cruiser for relaxed riding, you can't go wrong with this motorcycle. Hyosung is of course a relatively recent entrant into the Indian motorcyclist menu, but coming up is a bike from a company that's been at it literally for decades. Here's Kailash Menon with the all-new Royal Enfield Bullet 500 with the UCE engine.
This is the Bullet 500. It's a motorcycle that hasn't been wrinkled by time, trends or technology. It's a classic that has been an icon amongst Indian motorcycles. Now when it debuted back in 1990s, it was the biggest motorcycle your money could buy. It was lovingly called the Raja Gadi or king of all bikes. It was rugged, it was reliable, and it had played a lot of roles. It had waged wars with the army, it had patrolled with the police, and it was the hot favorite among bikers and backpackers who conquered Khardungla for kicks. This right here is the 2013 version. It looks pretty much the same, but the good bit, it gets a modern motor. So essentially, it's a modern classic. It's retained its retro looks and bolted on a reliable UCE engine. Simply put, a unit construction engine is an engine where the engine itself, the clutch case and the gearbox are packed into one compact casing. As a result, you get a motor which is frugal, reliable, powerful, and the one which has the least amount of transmission losses. But unlike the classic 500, it doesn't get electronic fuel injection. Pumping petrol into the motor is a carburetor with a throttle position sensor. Now the Bullet 500 puts out 26.1 bhp and twists out 40.3 Newton meters of torque. Now when compared to the fuel injected 500, that makes it 1 bhp weaker. But the difference, the slight difference that there is, it's only restricted to the spec sheet. Out in the real world, this one too feels pretty lively and energetic. The only difference would be the carbureted version. The throttle response is not as sharp and precise as the fuel injected 500. Now it's no crotch rocket. Redline it and it will rattle like crazy. Loads of low-end torque adds to its cruising credentials. Now compared to the older 500, this definitely feels a lot more leaner, a lot more lighter and a lot more faster, which is a good thing. But one thing Royal Enfield can't seem to put to rest are vibrations. On this motorcycle, everything is beautiful till about 90 kilometers per hour. I mean, the man and machine are in perfect harmony. But push past 90 kilometers and the vibrations start to creep up. Right from your boot to the tank and the handlebar vibrates like crazy. So that is a bit of a glitch. The ergonomics are unchanged. You sit ramrod straight and you sit a bit high. The suspensions take care of the rough stuff and the front disc bites hard when you clamp down. But the best bit about this motorcycle is attention to detail. The devil really is in the details. Check out the pinstripes on the petrol tank. Now, for those who didn't know, Royal Enfields are hand-tooled, hand-machined and hand-painted motorcycles. It's not like any other mass-market motorcycle where you take a gold leaf sticker, peel it and paste it on the tank. Here, the artist takes his brush and paints it on the tank. As a result, you get a petrol tank that is a personalized piece of art. But the 500 is not free of flaws. The stock seats could do with more cushion, the silencer emits a muted blat, and then there's no fuel gauge. Now this is a 2013 Bullet. It doesn't have a CB point start. In fact, you get an electric start, but still the ampere meter is there, which is pretty redundant. So I would have really appreciated if Royal Enfield would have thrown in a fuel gauge so that the rider on a ride is not making wild guesses about how much fuel is left in the tank. But it surely has evolved. With forest green paint, it looks better than before. And with modern mechanics, it's gotten maintenance free too. Priced at 1,37,979, it is 8 grand cheaper than the fuel injected 500. Now it's felt pretty close as far as the classic 500 is concerned, but here's why you should buy the Bullet 500. It's a retro ride and the design has been untouched for decades. It gets a modern motor now which is frugal, reliable and promises of a potent performance. The best bit, however, at 1,37,000 ex-showroom Delhi, this is the cheapest 500cc motorcycle your money can buy.
And that was our show for this week. We've obviously had a super time making it. We hope you've had a good time watching. Remember, you can catch the entire episode online at timesnow.tv or youtube.com. Till next week then, ciao and take care.